Come on, let's go.
Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
I can't live on bread and cheese.
And here we are. It is the Mac and Jack and Doc, maybe Pags, Saturday debate show. 8 a.m. every Saturday here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. You know, one of these days we just have to record the discussions before the show. All the debating and arguing and all that. It's great. So,
It's
Mac and
better
Jack.
than the show itself, I'm going to tell you, because you don't restrict us, Doc, in a format. We can just speak our minds before the show.
Do I restrict you here? When have I ever restricted you?
Yeah, it's like a debate thing. Like, you see the political moderators, they give you X amount of time
Ding,
to answer
time's
the
up, Jack.
question directly.
Yeah, but then they keep talking anyway. That's unbelievable.
Yes, they do.
Oh, boy. Anyway, welcome to the Mac and Jack Show. We've got another hour of great sports talk, great sports debate, great questions, great thinking, great people. There's nobody better than Mac and Jack, and it's always a pleasure to sit here with both of them every Saturday morning. So, hey, let's get right to it, guys. One of the big things that we hear about in sports is curses. Do you believe in sports curses? What do you think?
Well, I'm going to tell you, before the Red Sox won their first World Series, modern times here, they asked Derek Jeter about it, and he said, I believe there is a curse with the Red Sox, and I want to keep it going. I guess he was having a lot of fun with it. Let's put it this way. People are superstitious. Whether we want to admit it or not, I don't believe in curses, but I'm superstitious, and I hate to admit it. A case in point would be this. They were building around Yankee Stadium, like the new stadium, and someone threw in a Red Sox shirt, a cap, and they shoveled over it, and it was going to be buried on the ground. And then when the workers found out about it, they had to get it out of there. They had to dig it back up. Imagine all the money that cost, because it would have been buried there. And it would have been perceived as a curse if the Yankees weren't doing well and the Red Sox were moving forward. You know, the Yankees aren't doing that well. They weren't doing that well moving forward anyway, but people would have attributed to that. Baseball pitchers, they don't want to step on the line going out to the mound, you know, going to and from the mound. It's a superstition. But is there a curse? I mean, come on. I mean, I can't imagine there being any exact curse in sports. I can't think of one right now. So the answer is no. I mean, it's fun to say there's a curse, but there's not really one.
Well, you know, I disagree. There are curses in sports. The Bambino curse lasted forever. They get, you know, of course, they sold Babe Ruth to the Yankees, and the Red Sox were never the same again. The GOAT in Chicago. No, everybody remembers that, right? The black cat running across the field. All of a sudden, the team didn't play well anymore. And the reason why I believe there are curses is because people believe in it. The players believe in it. If you didn't believe in it, of course, it wouldn't be a curse. I mean, people believe in voodoo. They believe in ghosts. They believe in all this stuff. And probably some people out there listening right now believe in this stuff. I don't believe in ghosts. I've never seen a ghost. I don't believe in UFOs. I've never seen a UFO. So until I see one, I don't believe it. But I believe that people believe this. And the brain is a funny thing, guys. If you believe something is true, and even if it's not, you might believe in it. I mean, it's really crazy how people. You remember they were burning things at Yankee Stadium, weren't they? Burning like jerseys, and they were having like an exorcism. I forget exactly what it was, but they were actually having an exorcism there to try to get rid of the curse of the Bambino. Did it work? Well, the Red Sox ended up going to the World Series. Maybe it did. So I don't know. It's kind of a fun thing to talk about. That's why I put it in there, because I don't know. Is voodoo real? I guess and women are worse when it comes to believing in the superstitions and stuff like that. Worse than men. But I've seen a lot of men that believe this. Players, as Jack mentioned, with superstitions. It's a weird thing, but I think people really believe in it. If you believe in it, it's true.
Mac, there's a difference between a superstition and a curse. I think we have to distinguish. And you mentioned the black cat. That happened in 1969. A black cat ran in front of the Chicago Cub dugout at Shea Stadium when they were playing the Mets late in the year. But the Cubs were already faltering. They were going downhill. That was basically the last straw, the black cat. Oh, we're really doomed now, maybe was the thought, to certain
it happened
people.
in football.
But do you really think the players put out less effort?
I do.
Well, we're not going to win now because of black cat.
I do, because they want to have a reason why they lose, Jack. Nobody wants to say it's my fault that we're losing or it's our fault that we're losing, right? So the curse is a great reason to place it on there. A black cat ran across the field at the Dallas Giant game. Giants were ahead. After that black cat ran across the field, the Giants ended up losing the game. So, I mean, the people believe in this. And not that Dallas was just a better team than the Giants at that time. The Giants played a better half. But people believe in this stuff, Jack.
But why didn't the black cat hurt the Cowboys?
No, it was a Giant. It ran across the Giants sideline.
Oh, okay.
At the whole game. So that's good.
Before Doc goes, I'm going to give you an example of what you could say. Someone who's cursed, a player, former player, now a coach. One of our favorites, for all three of us, Donnie Mattingly. Wherever he's went, he can't get to the World Series. As a Yankee, as soon as he leaves, okay, they go on that World Series run, the 4 World Series victories. He comes back as a batting coach in 2004. They're 1 game away from the series. They collapse against the Red Sox. He couldn't get over the top with the Dodgers. A couple of years later, after he leaves, the Dodgers win their World Series. Now he's the Toronto Blue Jays bench coach. They get eliminated in the playoffs. It's like Donnie Mattingly, you look at him and you could joke, oh, no, he's cursed as far as getting to the World Series.
Yeah, I understand that perspective. I don't believe in curses. I don't think there's curses. And these curses all eventually end. The Rangers, they're cursed. They'll never win a Stanley Cup. Then they won a Stanley Cup. The Red Sox are cursed. They'll never win. The Cubs are cursed. They'll never win. But then they eventually win. So it goes away. But I do believe that both of you are onto something. The idea that players might believe, and I do recall Red Sox players over the years saying stuff about the curse, especially into the 1990s. And does that thought, like, we are going to lose, maybe it's real, even if I don't believe it, does that take some of the edge off, or does that make somebody play a little bit less assured of himself? I mean, that could happen. But then again, you see guys, you were just mentioning Mattingly, and it's such a shame. I feel bad for the poor guy. Let him win a World Series, but we
let
forget,
him get there.
Yeah, let him even get there, right? But we forget that Joe Torre had a record for the longest time of being the guy who had played and managed and coached in the most games in the history of baseball before reaching a World Series. So was Joe Torre cursed all those years? But then it went away. Mel Stottlemyre, right? Mel Stottlemyre comes up. The Yankees lose the World Series in '64. His whole career, he pitches great, but the Yankees never make it. His career ends. The Yankees go to the World Series the next year. And then, Mel Stottlemyre must be cursed. But then he becomes a coach, and he coaches the Mets and the Yankees to World Series. So I don't believe any of that. I will say this, too, though. When the Yankees were in the old Yankees Stadium, aura and mystique would come in, and people would say, like, ooh, that's the hallowed ground. And again, maybe it's just psychological. But I don't, and the design of the stadium as well. And I know people say, oh, the new stadium's as loud as the old stadium ever was. It's not, and it hasn't been. I've been to playoff games in both parks and stuff. The new stadium just isn't the same. You're not on top of the action like you were in the old stadium. And might that play a role in whether or not the Yankees win or not because of the intimidation factor in the playoffs sometimes, or with some players? Yeah, maybe. So I think there's some reality to all this. But is there really a curse, something outside of the game that's keeping teams from winning or losing? No, I don't believe that.
Agreed.
That's nice when everybody agrees. All right, so next week, before we go on, let's have this discussion. We'll talk about curses. We'll all say our part. We'll all agree, and that'll make everybody
Let
happy.
me ask you one question, guys, just before we move on to the next topic. Max said something interesting. The curse of the Bambino, the Red Sox were never the same until, maybe 75 years later, whatever. Had the Babe not gotten traded by the Red Sox, let's say they kept him all along, would it have made a difference? Wouldn't the Yankees still have been winning basically the same way, and the Red Sox would have been a step behind them, even with the Babe?
No.
You think the Red Sox would have won a couple of World Series that they did?
More than a couple. More than a couple.
But you know what? Here's I'm sorry. And I would have to really go back and look at the 21 Yankees and the 20 Yankees. But the Yankees weren't great. Number one, I have a great article coming on Start Spreading the News at 10 a.m. today where I talk about some of this. Teams need to have winning players if they're going to win. See, like the Yankees, I have my prescription for them to turn it all around. I say, got to bring in winning guys. The Yankees never won until they brought in Babe Ruth, who, happened to be a winner already. But it wasn't just Babe Ruth. Wally Shang, the catcher, had been a Red Sox. Everett Scott at shortstop had been a Red Sox. Herb Pennock and Home Run Baker had been on the Philadelphia A's and been champions. So the Yankees brought in a whole lot of guys. Babe Ruth gets all the credit, and he, of course, was the greatest player ever, and he was the guy that really they built the stadium around, and all that's true. But it wasn't just the Babe. The Yankees got a ton of those Red Sox players in those days, which helped the Red Sox become terrible and helped the Yankees become great.
The Boston Red Sox owner was Yonke at that time. Am I right?
Harry Frazee.
Now he sold Babe Ruth for a Broadway play. He was helping fund a Broadway play, and if you think about it, and maybe he was cursed. I mean, if you think about it, if he kept Babe Ruth on, that would have been the greatest show in Boston and New York. Never mind his Broadway play. I mean, he would have sold out Fenway Park forever and made more money than he could have counted. Instead, he took that money he got from Babe Ruth and invests in this Broadway play. I don't even remember the name of the Broadway play.
No, Nanette.
Yeah. So, Mac, history. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, John.
History may have played out much differently if the Babe stayed as a Red Sox. He may have possibly primarily been a pitcher because he was a great pitcher. And this isn't us making the decision, Mac. Obviously, I would have had him as a position player as you would have.
No, the Red Sox
at that time, he was such a great pitcher that he may have stayed in the rotation.
What you're saying isn't true. The Red Sox actually moved him to right field his last. He wanted to play the field. The Red Sox actually moved him. But he would have done both his last year. I don't think so, Jack. He wanted to play. He wanted to hit more than he was hitting. He wanted to play right field. He wanted to get away from pitching at the time. When the Yankees got him, he was a right fielder. They just put him in right field. I just did a thing on Babe Ruth, and his last year with Boston, he ended up being a right fielder primarily.
How many games did he pitch his last year with the Red Sox?
That I'm not sure.
That would be telling what he did his last year, because that would show where they were trending as far as he would have gone in the future.
I can look that all up. Babe Ruth, I believe, pitched 5 times as a Yankee in his career. Do you know what his record was?
I'm talking about it's a Red Sox.
Yeah, I'm just throwing some fun trivia out there. He pitched 5 times as a Yankee.
He's 5-0.
Yeah, it was 5-0.
That's prime time while he's looking up the last years of Red Sox. I know that's a veteran tactic that Doc is using.
I mean, his last year with the Red Sox, he hit 29 home runs, if I'm not mistaken. He was primary.
I don't care how much did he pitch his
last season? Well, I know that's what you're asking. I'm just saying I know he was moved to right field. That I do know. So,
right, so I'm going to look up the Babe and get the statistics for you. Oh, they're coming up so fast. All right, so here you go. In 1919, the Babe played in 130 games, and 1919 he played in 130 games, and he did. But Mac is right on, 29 home runs. He played left field, he played center field, he played first base, and he pitched. Let me get his pitching stats for
That
that
was his
year.
last year as a Red Sox,
That was his
1919.
last year as a Red Sox.
Yeah.
In 1919, he pitched in 17 games. He made 15 starts. He went 9-5 with a 2.97 ERA, pitched 133.1 innings.
Okay, so 17 starts earlier in his career. How many starts did he have?
All right, so what happened was the
Yeah,
starts did go down. So the year before he started 19 games, went 13-7. The year before he started 38 games. He went 24-13. The year before he started 40 games. He went 23-12.
Matt's correct. Matt's essentially correct because his starts were like half the amount of starts. So maybe they would have let him pitch now and then had he remained a Red Sox. But he primarily, without a doubt, would have been a position player. That wouldn't have been compromised.
So let's give the props to Mac. Yeah, good job, Mac. All right, so let's keep moving. Seems to me that coaches have outlawed, they've banned kneeling during the national anthem. Is this
no?
good?
Coaches didn't ban it at all. That's not accurate.
That was a satire, Doc. That was a satire from a website. So I'll change the question a little bit. What if the NFL decided that they were going to ban kneeling during the national anthem? What do you think? Do you think that would be good for the game? Does it violate some of these civil rights and freedom of speech? What do you guys think?
All right, so I'll jump in first. I think the NFL has the right to do that. I mean, we don't have the right in our place where we work to do whatever we want. So it's not a violation of civil rights if your employer tells you you have to do certain things and behave in a certain way or do certain things. There was just a thing on the news yesterday. Some lady was on a train in New Jersey or New York and started yelling at somebody, and she was immediately fired. I don't know the reason she was yelling at somebody, but she was yelling at somebody, and her company saw that, and she just got fired. They said that type of behavior is not acceptable for our company, whatever it is. I don't know any of the facts. The point is just that she was seen yelling on a train. It went viral, and she got fired. So does a place of employment have the right to say to their employees, yeah, you can do this or you can't do this? We expect a certain type of behavior in the workplace. So I think the NFL could do that. I don't know if that would be smart. I don't know if it wouldn't be smart. I don't know the feelings on the political landscape and the social landscape about how people would feel about that as far as the fans in the cities and the players themselves. But does the NFL have the right to do that? I believe they do. Absolutely.
Yeah, right now, currently, no one is kneeling. No one is taking a knee because emotions aren't high at this moment as far as society goes. But if something happens like another George Floyd incident, that where the country's emotions are really running strong, then it all of a sudden becomes an issue. There's going to be a certain amount of protest. I'm not sure what the answer is. One thing I've been saying as I get older, I shouldn't be ashamed to say I don't know what answers are to something. You take a school, for example. A parent sends a kid to school, and you could relate to this, Doc, and they don't want them to stand during the Pledge of Allegiance. What are you supposed to do? I mean, I think the answer would be there's a room for the kids whose parents gave them a note, and they'll wait in the room while the Pledge of Allegiance is going on in the class. I mean, where does free speech end? I mean, I'm not sure what the answer is, but the solution to me, if I was in charge of the NFL, if a player didn't want to kneel, if a player didn't want to stand, he can wait in the locker room. It's okay during the national anthem. He doesn't have to be out there during the thing. And because a certain amount of people in the stands are going to get offended. You got to keep that in mind. And there's also the economics involved. If you know, the NBA learned that is they wouldn't allow any political statements anymore, like written down and this and that, because it turns some people off, right or wrong. And I'm not saying what my view is on it. I'm just saying the economics of the NBA took a hit. So they addressed it with the players union, and the players union addressed it with the players and kind of cleared things out. Because at the end, the players, the owners, management, in a sense, they're all in it together because they want their league to work, because the players obviously want to get paid. The owners in the league want to make a profit.
It's you notice Colin Kaepernick, it's back in the news, and here's that satire website coming up saying this, about him wanting to be an NFL team. In fact, he wanted to be on the Jets. XFL and the USFL offered him a job playing with them, and he turned them down. So he really didn't want to play football. He just wanted to be in the news again. Listen, freedom of speech doesn't mean you can say what you want. It's political speech. It's freedom of political speech. That's what's the Constitution. That's what it's referencing. It's not referencing you could say anything you want at any time, because you can get arrested for that. But it is a civil right, Doc. Political freedom of speech is a civil right. I don't care what your work says. If for some reason they fired you, what a lawsuit you'd have. You can't kick them off a team. You can't take them out of the game because they're doing that. That's illegal. They have, and I was a veteran. They have as much right to political speech as anybody at any time. Is it wise to do? Of course not. It would hurt the game. It did hurt the game. And Colin Kaepernick was not kneeling because the flag. He was kneeling, as Jack was referring to, because of what the police were doing. This is why he was kneeling. Whatever. The point is, it is a civil right.
No, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But in the case of Colin Kaepernick, people forget he originally was going to sit on the bench, and he heard someone in the military was going to be insulted. And he met with that military man and explained his position that he'd never disrespect the military, but he wants to protest with the police. And the military man said a compromise would be, even though the military man wasn't comfortable with it, he said if you took a knee, it would be a lot better than just sitting on the bench during the national anthem. And he took a knee and he faced the flag. And as time went by, initially I didn't like it. As time went by, I thought to myself personally, it's not a sign of disrespect. I don't think. He's facing the flag. He's doing it his way on a knee. And, like I said on a past show, you see boxers during the national anthem shadow boxing and warming up. That always struck me as being wrong. But people say, well, they have the fight coming up. They have to stay loose. So I just don't know the answer to all these things, Mac. I really don't. But my philosophy's always been, if you're going to be hurting other people's feelings, they really believe in something, and I believe in something else, I better feel darn strongly about what I believe in if I'm going to hurt anyone else's feelings, because I try to respect other people's feelings, even if it's not necessarily my belief. Am I willing to sacrifice something? Would I be willing to sacrifice if I was someone else and stand for the national anthem if I knew how offended a lot of other people would be if I didn't?
All good things, but I'm going to disagree, Mac. I do believe that a business, an organization, can compel you to behave in certain ways as part of that business. Absolutely.
Listen. The business can do whatever it wants. That doesn't mean they're not going to be liable. You could do or say what you want as a businessman.
So if I work for company X and I decide to not wear clothes and come to work,
that's a terrible example.
Well, no, because there's an expectation. There's a rule. There is a limit. What I'm saying is there's a limit, absolutely, to what you can do.
That's not even comparable, Doc. Come on. Yeah, you can do better than that. You can do a
Doc,
lot.
let me give Doc a better one. New York Yankees. Aaron Judge, let's make believe, is in his free agent year. He decides he's going to grow a beard.
Mm-hmm.
They decide, and mention George Steinbrenner is still alive. they bench Aaron Judge. You're not playing. You're on the bench as long as you're
Here you go.
having a
Here,
beard.
here,
And
here
then
you go. Here
Aaron
you go.
Judge
Here-
is
That's
No,
that's
no,
a
no.
terrible.
Dennis Moss.
That's terrible too.
The
Listen,
Yankees
you're
won't let a
talking.
player
You're
have a
talking
beard.
about. But here's your examples you're giving me as compared to freedom of political speech. You're saying someone showing up naked and someone refusing to shave. That's not civil rights you're talking here. I'm talking.
What
I'm
Doc
talking.
has to say, can the
I'm
employer
talking.
demand?
Jack, I'm talking.
The
I am
employer
talking.
can tell
I
you
am talking. You as a citizen of the United States, according to the
on your
Constitution.
time. Yes, on your free
According to the
time.
Constitution,
On your free time,
no,
you
that's
can
not
go
what it
and
says in the
protest whatever you
Constitution.
want, but
The
you can't do
Constitution
it
doesn't
during
say.
the workday. You
The
cannot do it
Constitution
during the
does not
workday.
say. It does not say in your free time. It doesn't say that. There's nowhere in the Constitution that says that. It
But
says you have the right to freedom of speech, a political freedom of speech. That's what the Constitution
It
guarantees.
doesn't say those words, by the way. But
Oh, it does.
It
It says
does
freedom of
not.
speech.
It says
It sure
freedom of
does.
speech.
I got
Right.
a C in social studies, so I'm not sure what the
it's meant,
Constitution
and
says.
it's meant in the political way. That's why a politician come in and say whatever he wants about he can come out and outright lie if he wants, because it's freedom of political speech. That's why you can't come back at him and say you're wrong and I'm however you want to do it. It's freedom of political speech. You can't yell "there's a fire in a movie theater." That's not what they meant. The interpretation of that is political speech, Doc. It has nothing to do with being naked. I don't know where you got
what
that.
I'm saying is a business has the right to compel certain behaviors. They do, because they are employing you. You don't have a right to be an NFL football player. You don't
Okay.
have that right. That's not your right.
So-
That's your job. And your employer can say, I'm not saying if it's right or if it's wrong, but the employer can say, yes, you can behave this way, or no, you can't.
So-
You're asking, can the NFL do that? Yes, they can.
So my question to you then is, you're saying a business can, a private business can. Is the NFL a private business?
Yes.
No, it's not.
Yes, it
It's
is.
not a private. No, it's not a
It's
private
not a
business.
public
Doc.
business.
It sure is. It's
No,
a
it's
public business. Sure.
No,
How
it's
do you
not.
figure it's not? Tell me how it's not a public business.
A public employee works directly for the government. I was a public employee. I worked for a school district that was part of the New Jersey school. I worked for the state of New Jersey, in essence, right? So a football player works for a football team.
Exactly. Not the NFL. The NFL is an
The
organization.
NFL, but the team is a private business.
The NFL is
It's not a
funded-
public business.
The NFL.
ta-
Who builds? Let me ask you a question. Who helps build the stadiums? Does the NFL do that, or does the town or the state?
It
help them?
depends on the deal that the team
It
makes.
depends, yeah.
Yeah, with the
But
city
still, but there is that option, right? They do. Donors do want help doing this. So is it then a
but
private?
it's still not a
business?
public business. It's a private business.
There's no.
They're not
shareholder.
public employees.
There's
The
no
NFL
shareholders.
players are not public employees.
I'm not saying they're a public employee like a government employee. What I'm saying, Doc, is that they are funded. They are funded by fans. They are funded by towns that help them that help them build their stadiums. They are on public TV, right?
I think
They're not
Christopher's making
they're
the
not-
same point. The Constitution does not say you have the right to play in the NFL. That's the point.
Well,
The
you
NFL
don't
can
have-
tell the players, or the team can tell the players, that you can do this or you can't do that. They can. That's just because the employer has the right to do that.
Yeah, I know what a private business is, Christopher. A private business is owned by either a CEO of a company, and don't tell me that don't. It's not the same as the NFL with the CEO being whatever his name is, the head operations there, or an individual who has the right to say whether you can come in or leave or whatever the case may be. So you say the NFL is private. Then how come there's free agency, Doc? How come a player can get up and he can move to any team that's willing to pay him more? In other words, if you were private, and this was your company, you were a private company, how can the person that's in that company get up and move and get paid to move?
And
How
Christopher's
can you
making a great
trade?
point. Tyreek Hill was fined $7,000 for whatever it
Right.
says for not wearing socks. He has the right to wear or not wear socks
Right.
any other place, but not in the NFL. It's there's the proof.
He-
That's the same
Yeah.
exact point.
He got, but
And
he got
being
fined,
a
but he
free
still did
agent,
it.
or
But
but they made a rule that said whatever they were saying. I don't know the situation. You can't wear a certain type of
it's
sock.
a
The
uniform.
NFL
There's-
says you have to wear a certain type of
Well, what
helmet.
happened even in the Olympics, I forgot who was the company, was it Adidas or Reebok? They were the sponsors of the NBA Dream Team. Michael Jordan was with Nike, and Michael Jordan didn't want to be seen with, someone other than his sponsor's gear on. So he put a towel or something and he covered it up during the ceremony. He actually wore it, but he got around it by covering it up. Okay. But there were rules. He didn't want to have it on in the first place, but it was kind of a requirement. So he got around it that way.
Right.
Right.
And the free agency has nothing to do with whether it's a public employer or not. It's the rules within that organization. Every football player is not a free agent. You have to meet certain criteria in the sport and within your contract in order to become a free agent. Everybody's just
Well,
not
yeah.
a free agent to go. But even
Well-
if they were, it's still the
Right.
rules that the
Okay,
NFL
guys,
governs. It doesn't make it a
guys.
public business.
I don't like a conversation where I'm tongue tied here.
So anyway,
All right. Listen. I will give you the edge on this one, Doc. I'll give you the edge on this one, but I still say that everybody has a right to freedom of speech, especially political.
No, I'll be the judge, Mac. You won this fight, but Doc got the decision. So Doc wins a disputed, highly controversial decision over you.
All right.
All right. I don't quite understand any of this, but okay. So let's go to the NBA. Totally different topic. They seem to have these new rules regarding load management. The NBA is trying to stop load management with a new policy. No more than one star can be unavailable. Does this solve the problem?
No, not at all. The NBA has a very tight schedule. Sometimes games are somewhat bunched together. Doc, you especially should understand this, and I think do completely as a runner. You need a certain amount of rest after a hard workout, after a race. Your body has got to regenerate. You can't go out the next day or even the day after that and go for a really hard workout. You really need a few days, light jogging the next, a couple of days. And then you can kind of start working out harder when the soreness goes away. And the NBA is going to determine which one player. Obviously, in the case of LeBron James, I understand where they're coming from. Fans pay good money, and they're missing the star players who they're paying for. I think the solution is this to a degree, even though there's no perfect solution at all. Your star players like LeBron James, you shouldn't be allowed to rest them on the road if it's a road game. If it's a home game, even though it's not ideal, at least people that live in the area have a lot of chances to see that player play. They have 41 games a year. They can then go to another game. Okay, they'll have to pay again, granted, but at least logistically, they're in the area. But if LeBron James is coming somewhere like Madison Square Garden, the Lakers might be visiting New York once a year. I'm not sure, twice at most. I don't know what the schedule is. You don't want a scenario where he's resting that game and not playing. The only other solution is you allow them to make a token appearance, play a few minutes, so at least you get to see him play. And I just don't think they can make this load management thing work, picking out one player. Maybe the answer is leave it up to the teams, but if a player doesn't play X amount of games, X amount of minutes one game, he's then ineligible for the next couple of games. Because if he's really hurt, then you have to keep him out X amount of time. Kind of what they do in baseball. A pitcher has to pitch to X amount of batters now, during late in the game. There's some ways to modify the rule. There's no perfect solution, but I don't think just saying one star player at a time solves the problem. Because if you sit out LeBron James and he's coming to play, let's say the Knicks, and I have tickets to that game, that doesn't make me happy.
I think it's a token thing that they did just to say they're doing something. I mean, first of all, you would have to who is a star on your
I was going
team?
to ask that.
Are there
Who's the
two
star?
stars on your team, or like with Golden State, they got 5 stars, I think, on their team right now. So I mean, who
Well,
how do you
Steph
pick that?
Curry would be the guy. Anyone else you could get
But you
by
know what I'm
with on
saying,
one
Jack.
team.
You're not naming who the star. I mean, if you said, if you went to each team and said, "Hey, this is the star that's unavailable," I get it. Then I would say there's more teeth to this. And how can you question whether the guy's injured or not? I mean, are you going to get a note from the team doctor who's going to pat it anyway and say, "Yeah, he's hurt"? I mean, it's very hard. I mean, at least they're on top. It looks like they're trying to do something. It doesn't have a lot of weight there. And as far as Doc is not a professional marathon runner. So, I mean, comparing him to an NBA.
But he makes but he makes a hard effort.
Yeah, he does. He does. He got the Superman
rest
shirt.
up.
Yeah, he's got the Superman shirt on. I mean, he's playing to the crowd. He's doing a good job, but he's still not getting paid to run where these NBA players are not running for 4 hours, Jack, and they're definitely not, and they're definitely getting paid for it. So I mean, that's a
All right, so I think what we should do is I should get paid to run the New York City Marathon. I think that answers the question.
Yes.
So starting now, just start sending money to the Mac and Jack show. We're looking, how much do NBA players get? 40 million a year?
That's about right.
All right. So yeah, I'll take 40 million for to run the marathon this year. I'll tell you what, because I don't want to make people pay too much. Let's just give me $1 million per mile. I'll take 26.2 million. I think
But you'd have to probably get a sponsor, Doc, because I don't think
the Mac and Jack show. We got it.
We'll get you a Mac and Jack shirt, and you can run the marathon in that. Be good advertising
For 26 million. I mean,
no, but 82 games NBA, and now we're not even talking about the playoffs. That's what you want to peak for. You want to be at your best for the playoffs. And they don't have load management during the playoffs. Notice that. They're not resting guys during the playoffs.
Not at all.
But you pointed out, Mac, just the star players. There's certain star players who are must-see viewing when they're on the road. If the Bucks are coming to your hometown, you want to see Giannis. Okay, they got Damian Lillard now, but Giannis is the guy. Joel Embiid is the guy with the Sixers. Steph Curry, definitely the guy with Golden State. You're a Steph Curry. I mean, it's not the same. It's
all right,
not.
I think when you try to make rules for this kind of stuff, it just because you're coming up with rules and that they make some sense, but I think it just becomes it becomes like there's always going to be a way around the rule. You have to play this many minutes. So, all right. So he just stands on the court. He doesn't really try. He's dogging it. The crowd then gets mad at him because he's not really playing. If you want to see LeBron James play or whoever, you want to see him playing hard. And if he's hurt or he can't play, then he can't play hard. Let me ask you this. Ted Williams, what did he do in his last at-bat?
He hit a homer.
He hit a home run. Was that the Red Sox last game of the year? It wasn't. It was not. The Red Sox last game of the year was in Yankee Stadium. And I know a certain person, my dad, who is the world's greatest Ted Williams fan. And my dad got tickets to the last game of the season in the 1960 season so he could go see Ted Williams in his final game ever. But Ted Williams homered in his last at-bat in Fenway Park, and that was it. And it's one of the great stories of all time. And there was a poem written and a story written about it and everything else. Like, it's beautiful, right? But he sat out the last couple games. He deprived the fans in New York of seeing Ted Williams in his last couple games. But it's okay. It's okay because he wanted to end his career in Boston. And if LeBron James comes to New York and he can't play those games or he's not able to, then he doesn't play. When you go to the game, you can't, the fans don't get to say who plays. So the team says, this is the team I'm going to put out on the court. This is the team I'm going to put out on the field. And sometimes you see the great players, sometimes you don't. I think trying to manage that by the league making rules about who can play, when they can play, how many guys they can play, who's a star, who's not a star. I think it just becomes very complicated.
But the league did it. You mentioned Major League Baseball. When Hank Aaron was going for Homer 714, 715, he wanted to hit it in Atlanta, break the record 715. Commissioner Bowie Kuhn made him play in Cincinnati. He told him he can't sit out.
Different
It's
day,
not in the
different
best
age.
interest of the game.
That's a different day and a different age, Jack. I mean,
Well,
that,
74. Derek
yeah.
Jeter, he played his last game in Boston, but he didn't play shortstop. He wanted to end his career at Yankee Stadium from the shortstop position when he had the walk-off hit. He played the field that game. Then he went to Boston, and he decided he kind of owed it to the fans to make an appearance. But so he batted a couple of times, okay? Just so they could have a viewing of him to end his career in Boston over there, but not in the field. He wanted that to be in New York.
And you
Right,
know
but
what's
the,
interesting?
but the point is, it becomes impossible to legislate these things. That's
No
my
doubt.
point.
And you know, Doc, the another thing that is crazy. The star isn't necessarily your best player now. I mean, LeBron James is a star of the Lakers, but when Anthony Davis is healthy, he's the better player right now. So if you sit down LeBron James for that one game,
Arguably.
and you don't sit down Anthony Davis, I mean, it doesn't affect the game as much as if you sat Anthony Davis, if you sit LeBron James.
It's close. LeBron might still be the best player.
Yeah,
might.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
Wasn't there a
arguable, is
game,
what I'm
Jack?
trying to
Jack,
say.
you're gonna know this because you know this stuff unbelievably. You remember every single game, but and I only followed this on the periphery. But wasn't there a game? I think Mark Sanchez was the Jets quarterback at the time, and the Jets played the Colts late in the season, and the Colts were gonna have a perfect record.
Yeah.
But instead of playing all their best players, they didn't in the last
good
game because
point.
they wanted to rest their players for the playoffs because that's really what mattered. Then I think they lost in the playoffs anyway. But the team has to have the right to do that. Like you can't say you must play Peyton Manning for this many minutes or whatever because then if he gets hurt, then what do you do? So Peyton Manning has to be a quarterback. So he's the star of the team and he's the star of the game. And the fans in New York have a right to see Peyton Manning or whatever it was. I don't know if it was a home game or away game, but then
Yeah,
he
I think
dropped
they
back.
were 14-0. The Colts were 14-0, and they were getting ready for the playoffs, and they didn't want to keep pushing for an unbeaten season. And I remember the second half, Peyton Manning going over to the coach, Jim Caldwell, and practically begging, put me back in. And the coach said, no, you're sitting it out. Basically, the Colts, I'm not saying they tried to lose the game, but they weren't putting forth their best effort. They took their foot off the accelerator.
And I think that hurt them. I think that hurt them going into the playoffs when they lost too. I think they really.
Well, they got to the Super Bowl. They did get to the Super Bowl that year. They lost to the
but
Saints.
they lost. Right.
Yeah.
I think you go with the best you got when it's. That would be me. Anyway.
No, but that isn't the issue. The NBA is doing what they're doing because they don't want the fans to be deprived of paying good money for tickets not to see star players. That's what they're paying for. Listen, you know what they do in sports now, guys, that they didn't do years ago? Years ago, every ticket was the same for every game.
That's a fair point.
Now they charge a lot more money to see elite teams.
Agreed.
I would pay money. Okay, I'm taking my son-in-laws actually to an NBA game. A couple of my son-in-laws late November to see the Nets play the Charlotte Hornets. Okay, I'm mad, but the prices were reasonable for that game compared to some other games. If it was the Lakers, I would have to pay a lot more. Imagine I was willing to pay crazy money to see the Lakers and LeBron James because they wanted to see LeBron. We're psyched. He's not playing that game, not because he's injured. That's a risk all fans understand that they take, that if a player's injured, tough luck. But the guy is sitting on the bench capable of playing, but the team decides, nah, we want to rest him. That's a hard pill to swallow.
I think you make a great point with the fact that they have changed the pricing because Team X is coming in. That's probably, It has to be because Team X is seen as an elite team, which means they have elite players. And if you're paying extra money to see an elite team because they have elite players, and then you're not getting a chance to see those elite players, somehow you're getting deprived. But I think we've all gone to a Broadway play or something like that, and you get there and you think you're going to see actor X or whatever, and you get that little piece of paper in the playbill, and it says the role of whoever is being played by somebody else today, the understudy. I mean, that just happens. I think there's a tacit understanding that when you go somewhere to see a live performance, that sometimes you're not necessarily going to see the people who you think you're going to see. That's just part of sports. The NBA is sitting too many guys.
Try
the way that
explaining
gets
it.
hurt is people will stop going to the games, right?
Try explaining that to your kid that you're taking to watch, LeBron James coming to play the Nets. And
I took my kids to games, and we didn't always see the players we thought we were going to see.
Well, Doc, you mentioned this point too. After Aaron Judge broke the American League home run record, the next to last game of the season, he didn't play the last game. And we thought, as I recall, he should have gotten up there and batted one time the next day.
I thought he should have played the whole game.
Right.
But for a different reason. But for a different reason. He had a chance. If he went 4 for 4 or whatever, and Luis Ariz didn't get any hits, he had a chance to win the Triple Crown.
Okay.
And he took that opportunity and threw it away by resting. And the reason he rested that last game, I get it. He was worn out from the home run chase. But the idea that he was resting for the playoffs, which is what some people were saying, was ludicrous because the Yankees had like a week off after that game. He had plenty of time to rest. And my feeling wasn't that he deserved a break. My feeling was when you have a chance for greatness and you can be the Triple Crown winner, you got to go for it. You have to be like, you want to talk about marathons, that'd be like you have a chance to set the world record in the marathon. You've already set it in the half marathon or something else. I don't know. And you have a chance and there's only a mile to go and you decide, I think I'll walk. Don't need
I understand what you're saying. And you're making an excellent point, but my thinking was all the fans were there the next day, and there were a lot of ticket sales thinking the game was going to be important with Aaron Judge the last game, and fans who got tickets in advance make an appearance. Okay, I understand you're worn out, you're mentally, you don't want to be there at all. Get up one time in the first inning, and that's it. And at least the fans could say, well, we saw Aaron Judge. At least he made a cameo.
I don't disagree with that.
And Maurice makes the point. Tickets prices are up, but I'm sure they're impacted by the salaries of today's players. It's still a business, which means the owners are all about profit. True statement. And
if you keep going into NBA games, and the players aren't playing, then you're going to stop going to the NBA games.
And if you own a business, that's what you're in business for, is that you're not in to lose money. You know what I would love to see, and this will never happen? I would love to see an owner, like for the Philadelphia Phillies, for example. I would love to see him buy tickets for people that can't get them, right? For just anybody that hasn't been able, and just fill that stadium one time for a playoff game. I would.
You're talking, Mac, a playoff game. Interesting point. The future of the Tampa Bay Ray franchise. You wonder about. They couldn't sell out their playoff games. I mean, what would they have? What did they have? Like a 30,000 seat stadium? They couldn't sell it out. This is the playoffs.
No, they've had problems.
Tampa's a city, but baseball hasn't taken off there. Football hockey are big in Tampa, and you kind of wonder: is there any other city that doesn't have a franchise now who would welcome them, would turn out for them?
Oakland would.
Oakland. Oh, please.
Anyway,
speaking of Tampa Bay had a football team called the Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers had a quarterback named Tom Brady, and Tom Brady was a great quarterback. And the Jets have a quarterback named Zach Wilson. This is a very strange transition. And Zach Wilson is not a very good quarterback, but he had a couple of good drives last week against the Kansas City Chiefs. And for a moment there, maybe for a whole quarter, maybe the third quarter, it looked as though Zach Wilson was turning it all around. Is Zach Wilson turning it all around, or are we making too much of a couple of plays, a couple of drives in the middle of a football game against a Chiefs team that obviously didn't bring their A game? They still won. Is Zach Wilson, has he turned the corner? What's your thoughts on Zach Wilson?
Jack is
Well,
going to say yes, and I'm going to take it from Jack first. Listen, Zach Wilson had one good game. In 3 years with the Jets, he's had his one good game as a quarterback. Jack will say, oh, they won with Zach Wilson. And they didn't win because of Zach Wilson. So he passes, I think I got the stats here. He passes for 245 yards and 2 touchdowns. As you said, the Jets still lost. Patrick Mahomes threw 2 interceptions, and the Jets still lost. Their great defense gave up over 100 yards to the running back over there on the Chiefs because the Chiefs evidently right now haven't got their offense together yet. They will by the end of the year. So to me, we are making a huge deal. Well, not us, fans, sports commentators. Here we go. We got a shot at the playoffs this year. We're gonna go. And as we discussed before the show, and this was part of the discussion we had, the Jets would have to be one of the best 6 teams in the AFC. So you got the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills there. You got New England's already beat them. And then you're going to say they're good as Kansas City or better than Kansas City and the Chargers. They're better than the Browns, the Baltimore Ravens, one of these teams to make the playoffs. They're not making the playoffs this year, even if Aaron Rodgers comes back.
Mac, he was talking about Zach Wilson. We don't need an editorial on the team.
As Zach Wilson goes, he is not going to lead the Jets to the playoffs or in a playoff position. He's not there yet. Maybe next year, maybe the year after. I don't know. This year, he's not ready to do that yet.
No, Zach Wilson was sensational against the Chiefs. I mean, he was fitting the ball in tight areas. A lot had to do with coaching. They are finally letting him play. You know, they were making him before that execute so conservatively. He could never open up. He could never get it going. They play to his strengths. I mean, Zach Wilson has an excellent arm. Excellent. He has really good feet, moves around well. It all comes down to the game plan, you know, and his judgment. And they set up a great game plan, you know, against the Chiefs. And he executed it well. With that said, we are making too big a deal based on one performance, on any one quarterback's one performance. But I'll tell you this. If Zach Wilson was on the 49ers and Brock Purdy was on the Jets, Zach Wilson would succeed with the 49ers and Brock Purdy would have problems with the Jets. Okay? A lot has to do with the coaching, the system you're in. But we are making too big a deal. One game, you know what Zach Wilson did? He basically revived his career in this sense. Even if Zach Wilson is terrible the rest of the season, let's say he's terrible, he reverts back to being really bad, and the Jets decide to move on from him. Other teams are going to want to pick him up to be at least a backup quarterback because they're going to look at the film from the Chiefs game and say, you know, this guy's got a lot of potential. Maybe he'll put it together at some point. Number 2 overall draft choice. Look at what he did against Kansas City. So what Zach Wilson basically did was help himself moving forward. No matter what happens now, he's going to have a job with another team, if not the Jets. But hopefully it's the Jets going forward, and he builds on this, you know, and turns out to be the quarterback the Jet brass was hoping he'd be.
I'm going to disagree that he proved anything. I think last year, Mike White had some games where he looked pretty good. I'm trying to look up total yards here in a game. Yeah, here's a quarterback who on October 30th, 2022, threw for 355 yards. And looks like he had 2 touchdowns that game. You know what that quarterback's name was? Zach Wilson. Everybody, if you're playing in the NFL, you're going to have some. He's got to have a level of talent. Obviously, he does. Is he a good quarterback? I don't think he's proven that yet. I don't think he proved it by having a good quarter or a good couple of drives during a quarter. The Jets had other chances later in the game. He did not come through. And didn't he make a big fumble? Wasn't there a fumble in there?
was one fumble. That was the only turnover. But there's a difference between.
Wasn't that fumble the thing that gave the
No,
Chiefs the ball?
That's a physical mistake. I can live with that. That's not like bad judgment on an interception. I can live with that. An interesting stat against the Chiefs. Zach Wilson is the only quarterback who outperformed Patrick Mahomes in a few different categories, all of them together, since Mahomes has been in the NFL. So that's kind of noteworthy. Look, he had a big game. I agree with Mac, and I agree with you, Doc. We can't get carried away on one game. I suspect he'll do okay tomorrow against Denver. Okay. As long as the Jets win, that's fine. He doesn't have to be very good necessarily. They just have to win the game. But if Zach Wilson plays poorly and they lose the game, now he's reverted back to his old self. The reprieve that he got from the public, the media, that's going to be lost.
No,
So,
I agree with you.
I think he'll play good enough, maybe not outstanding, but good enough that it's going to be acceptable.
My feeling, my point is that he had a big game last year too once, and nobody remembers that.
I don't know like that. He wasn't zipping the ball in like that.
He threw for 355 yards, but the point is that that happens sometimes. It doesn't prove anything. His overall body of work is poor.
What's interesting to me with the Jets is why they haven't got a good backup behind Zach Wilson. They have not gone out and got another quarterback, and I don't understand why they haven't brought somebody in, a former XFL player. I mean, there was a few that
Simeon was a former first-round draft choice. They brought him in.
I don't know. I don't know why they haven't looked. I don't know why they haven't brought in a quality second stringer. How's that?
Mac, you had 3 quarterbacks. There was a chain to come in. There was Aaron Rodgers. Zach Wilson was his backup. No one was complaining about Zach for the most part. Michael Kay did, I remember on his show. But for the most part, no one was complaining about Zach Wilson being the backup. If anything, the Jet fans were fine with it. They said, let him learn under Aaron Rodgers. He could stay on the team. And Zach Wilson was thrown in way before anyone expected.
Oh, yeah.
So they had a 3rd-string quarterback in Tim Boyle. All of a sudden, he became the 2nd string. The injuries threw things out of whack. It wasn't the planning. The planning was fine. Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle. So now you're saying a backup. You're not going to give a big draft capital for a backup at this point. And if you got a guy like a Jacoby Brissett, he's not the answer. That means get rid of Zach Wilson. Once you're bringing in the backup to play ahead of Zach Wilson, you've given up on him at this point. You may as well cut him or whatever.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of good points made today because there's always good points made on the Mac and Jack Saturday Debate Show, and actually in every single show on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network, especially when Mac and Jack are involved. Hey, this has been another great hour, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being part of this. You come back next Saturday, 8 a.m. We'll have more great sports talk. Have a great day, everybody.
Take care, folks. See you tomorrow on the Big Football Show.